Every muscle in my body was locked in position, but there was nothing I could do. The tunnel opened, but I had a soul aspect walk into my field, future aspect of me, if you will, one that had arrived to kind of take me on this new journey. The souls that have arrived were ascended masters, were archangels, and through this process, I ended up with 4 of my oversouls in the body as well. People around me started noticing energy. They started knowing these healings that were taking place, even though I wasn't trying to do this. A typical walk-in is what they call a soul exchange. Mine was what was called a soul braid, meaning that the soul braid occupied my field while I was still here. All of the soul aspects that have arrived since then have had a part in my soul existence.
The A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast.
I am here with Ken Lloyd. He had an amazing near-death experience, non-typical, but still amazing. And he also experienced what is known as walk-ins. Hi, Ken. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your amazing show and, your audience.
Well, all of this started around 7 years ago, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So the actual event happened in spring of 2018, but let me fill you in on the details prior to that. So my life up until that point was cybersecurity. I had developed 3 cybersecurity companies, and all of them were acquired. And this was the 3rd acquisition. And I had a business partner that was kind of rubbing me a little wrong, if you will. Now, prior to all of that, my life was full of a lot of trauma. I had a birth defect that created, we would call it extreme introvert, if you will. Never wanted to leave the house, never wanted to even talk to the customers. Even though I created all this wonderful technology, I never wanted to engage with everyone because of the condition I had. So I had no religion, no spiritual background. In fact, I was just this logical bits and bytes kind of guy doing the thing I was doing. So in early 2016, I believe it was, I ended up with ice pick headaches. And I started passing out with eyes wide open. I could see myself falling, but I actually couldn't move the body when I was falling into, I would say passing out, but eyes wide open. The diagnosis was a pituitary tumor that began growing, and over the 2 years, it became larger and larger. And in spring of 2018, it impacted me quite a bit. So I received a phone call from the business partner one morning, and as usual, it was an angry situation. I was on a lot of energy drinks. I was probably the poster child for Red Bull, but a lot of energy drinks. I was on focused medication to just try to get through my day. I get the phone call, and I don't remember what the topic was, but once again, I found myself angry. So I went just to lay down in bed, just to calm down. And the moment I lay down in bed, I was filled with electricity, something I've never experienced before. And it arched my back with the stomach up in the air, like an upside down letter U. And I always tease people, every yoga instructor would be proud of me. So I'm in this position, and as this is happening, I begin feeling this energy being pulled out of my abdomen. I had no idea what was happening. When I had the NDE event in 2018, and I felt that energy coming out of me, as I say, they released the trauma. They also removed the fear of everything. Now, I don't mean at 2 a.m. in an alley, I'm not going to have fear. That's flight or fight. But I found myself rapidly switching from an introvert to an extrovert, which I got to tell you, I would have never, ever have thought. So I had the calmest experience. So during the NDE, when I was, in the bed, I got to tell you, I'm pretty sure I was freaking out a little bit, right? I have never felt energy moving through the body. I touched an electrical outlet once. That scared the crap out of me, right? So it's kind of the same feeling, like, what is happening? And why can't I move my body? Every muscle in my body was locked in position, right? I cognitively, I had no idea what was going on, right? It was so intense. The thought of me understanding or contemplating or trying to ask questions, figure this out, never entered my mind. I couldn't move. I remember seeing the room, right? And I remember seeing the bed and the fan and all of these things, but there was nothing I could do. There is no shifting or changing what was taking place, within the physical experience. And then when you feel something moving in your stomach, swirling around, and then it literally feels like it's being pulled out. How do you explain that, right? Especially given I'm a logical guy. I had to know how things work. This was my life. I had no explanation, none. But I will tell you, not having an explanation was the drive to figure it out. When you have something so incredible happen to you, so unexplainable, you can't ignore it. And when I got up, that's what I did. I tried to figure out everything. And, there are certain times in my life that I have felt passion. Every time I started a company, it was passion, right? You woke up in the morning, you did everything you could. You went to bed, you thought about, how do I do better? How do I get more? How do I get to the business? That passion arrived again the very next day. All I could do was look and search and read and ask questions and talk to people. What is going on? Now, my entire event, if you will, only lasted for about 2 minutes. And then I passed out and I woke up the next day. My life changed after that. Now, my NDE, I didn't have a visual of me going over. I didn't have the experience of, seeing myself there, having a life review, and I didn't end up instantly healed. In fact, it took me almost a year before I had realized what that moment was. So what had happened is, as I was locked in this position, my life trauma, from my birth condition, from the business partner, from everything that had happened in my life, was being pulled out of me within those 2 minutes. Not only that, but the best way for me to describe what happened, the other piece of it, is when we think about the idea of the proverbial tunnel opening, and you'll go to the other side and have that experience. The tunnel opened, but I had a soul aspect walk into my field. I didn't know this at the time. And again, it took me a little while. That soul aspect began changing my life slowly and slowly and slowly. So I woke up the next morning peaceful, which was very unusual. So this began my journey of exploration. I hit Google. I hit Google hard, right? What happened? What was this? What was the idea of energy in the body? What was consciousness? This soul aspect that came over began shifting my awareness and pulling me away from technology and moving me into the things that I couldn't actually tangible touch and understand. Began reading the books, went to a psychic, right? And they told me a little bit about what happened, but just a little bit. And I found myself more and more reaching out to the metaphysical community, having the past life regressions done, right? Reading about people's experiences. And over the course of about a year and a half, things started changing with people around me. People around me started noticing energy. They started knowing these healings that were taking place, even though I wasn't trying to do this. I will tell you, within that year and a half, I had this urge to get off of all the medications, to get off of the energy drinks, to learn about detoxing the body, shifting the diet. The TV went off. No more news, no more movies. I didn't even listen to music. I found myself in isolation, where the only thing that moved the needle for me every day was learning more and more about the things I didn't know about. I ended up reading a book, Energy Healing. trying to understand what it was. So they had some exercises in the book, and I started doing these things to the people around me, and they started having, again, the responses. I took an energy healing modality and found that I could do all the exercises as well. Now, the universe has a funny way of putting people in your place, putting people in your way that help you understand what's happening. I didn't have a lot of information. I wasn't able to meditate. I wasn't able to get any of the guidance. I just had this deep inner intuition, a guidance from that soul walk-in. So I had a woman show up one day that told me I was a walk-in. Caught my attention. Sometimes we get those buzzwords and we're like, well, we need to respond. We need to look. So I went out and I bought a book by a woman named Sheila Seppi called Walk-In Cosmology of the Soul. And as I'm reading the book, it starts to resonate. I start to understand, wait, some other folks have had similar experiences. So I booked a session with Miss Sheila, and she helped me understand the idea of what was called a soul braid. Now, let me take a moment here and give some background on walk-ins just generally. A typical walk-in is what they call a soul exchange. So as we reach a certain point in our life, we have a contract with another soul. We will exit through an NDE, typically through an NDE, and another soul will come in and take the place. It's an exchange, a swap, if you will. And when this happens, when that new soul arrives, they end up in, separating from their partner rather rapidly, changing jobs, moving, and they begin the life work of taking care of the trauma that was there so the soul walk-in can also have an experience. And usually that experience is to serve others in whatever way that is. So that's a typical exchange. Mine was what was called a soul braid, meaning that if you could think of the braids of a rope, the soul braid occupied my field while I was still here. Again, at the time, I didn't actually go over to my awareness. So as I began moving further and further through this, as I moved through my journey, and I recognize there's a soul aspect of me, future aspect of me, if you will, one that had arrived to kind of take me on this new journey. All of the soul aspects that have arrived since then have had a part in my soul existence. The souls that have arrived were ascended masters, were archangels, and through this process, I ended up with 4 of my oversouls in the body as well. The difficulty with my journey is that I never got a lot of information. They didn't directly come out and talk to me, perhaps a few times, but it was that inner intuition, that inner knowing, that inner drive to go seek somebody who could help you understand what was happening. See, they kept me in isolation through the 7 years so that I wouldn't have external inputs, so I wouldn't understand what's going on. I wouldn't have preconceived notions about what was going to happen to me. And even now, as these soul aspects are with me, they don't individually identify. They come to me as a collective, as a one voice in one aspect, and they guide me day to day now. Within the last 3 months, they actually daily communicate with me and daily channel with me verbally, especially when I'm out doing a hike or a walk. But prior to that, everything was blind to what was going on, almost as blind as it was that day I had the NDE. I just know everything in my life was shifting. Every passion, every desire, everything I was interested left. And this was them guiding me towards the job I do. More and more things started happening in terms of the energy healing, and more people showed up in my life. On April 1st, 2023, so that was just about 2 years ago, I had a woman doing a session on me. We all want our attunements and our activations and raising our frequency. And, every healer needs a healer. So even me, I have to go to someone else to work on me. I can't heal myself. So as this woman is having the session on me, she says 12 more souls have arrived. So at that time, 12 more arrived into my field. So I had a soul braid of 13 other walk-in souls. Now, these were, to my awareness, future versions of me or aspects of me. And to be clear, they weren't full souls. They were just pieces, if you will, or aspects. The way I understand a soul aspect in my basic knowledge is every soul aspect has a tool. And they were bringing a tool to me to do the job I do for other folks. So that had happened on April 1st. People around me were starting to feel, I took a Reiki class as well, just to see what energy was. And what happened here is my body started shifting and changing. I would feel these tingles, pinpricks, if you will, but very, very gentle, in my toes and in my hands as I'm laying still, and it started about 4 years ago. And as I raised my frequency, right, as I did the healing work on those around me, and as I moved through my journey, they got more intense and more intense. And as they intensified, the people around me would notice shifts happening to them without me interacting with them. Come to find out, as I was raising my frequency in the body, those soul aspects were amplifying them in the body. And I say in the body, let's just say in the energy field around me. This created, that amplified the healing that was happening. So I would eventually start getting people in front of me that would have, a shoulder issue, right? And I would find over a period of 3 or 4 weeks that everyone showing up for me to work on them had a shoulder issue. And it would take me an hour or so to learn that, okay, there are trapped emotions in there to, visually or mentally reach into the scene and pull the trapped emotions out. Or I would get the message there's an ancestor attached or past life or childhood trauma, so on and so forth. And ultimately, these are what I call the root causes. Spirit, the team, was teaching me how to recognize what was creating the dis-ease or the uncomfortable in the body and how to move that energy out. As this happened, it may have taken me an hour to fix somebody's shoulder. And I say me, it's really the team. I don't do anything. I just show up. But it may take an hour for the shoulder to be fixed. But now, today, it takes 8 to 10 seconds. As this happens, everything intensifies and rapifies. So Spirit has an interesting way of not only showing you things, but helping you understand that my first 47 years of my life, 25 of that was writing software, creating programs. How do we investigate something happening? How do we create the solution for it? And then how do we get that solution to the world? That was my life. They were doing the same thing in energy. They were putting enough people in front of me so I could create the solution once I understood it and then deliver it to the world. My mission is millions of people. To do that, I have to be able to work on hundreds or thousands of people at once through these codes that are created from the team. Every week is something new. Every week they continue to shift me to see something new and to work on something new so I can create more and more of these. I call it in the computer world, auto magic, right? Computer, hey, we're going to do something auto magic today. Well, it turns out what I'm doing is auto magic in the way that when you find yourself in front of me, whether I'm assisting you or not, verbally or in a replay, the energies are happening auto magically. These codes are created by the team. They do all the work. And then my life shifted again on December 12th, 2023, the same year. I get a little intuition that says, Ken, go meditate. And so I did. I dropped in my closet and I instantly found myself frozen in position. As I like to say, I couldn't itch and I couldn't twitch, meaning that I had no ability to move the body as this energy started coming down through my crown, through my body and filling my body. And I began asking a lot of questions non-verbally. What is this? What's happening? And I get the message loud and clear, hang on, we're a little busy. It lasted for 15 minutes. 13 of those minutes, I couldn't think. All I could do was observe what was happening. This was the day that the higher self stepped into my body and began changing my life completely. Within 3 weeks of that, I was asking for a divorce. Now, I had a 17-year marriage, beautiful marriage, but as I began shifting through life, as again, these soul aspects began moving me into these higher frequencies, I found myself in a position where the relationship was no longer the same. Her frequency had stayed the same. I had raised, so we were no longer in alignment. So 3 weeks later, asking for a divorce, sold all my vehicles. Now I built 3 companies, living in Naples, Florida. I was doing well. Put the house up for sale in Naples, Florida. And by March, I found myself in Mexico. Yeah, I had left the country, never been out of the country before. I went to Mexico. I don't speak Spanish. I had no idea what I was doing. Found myself in a place called Jalapa, Mexico. And if you know much about Jalapa, it's amazing. There are no cars. There are horses, donkeys, and four-wheelers. And you get to Jalapa by boat. Yes, I was there for 4 weeks. And within 2 weeks, I had 9 more soul walk-ins show up into my field. Most of these I wasn't aware of. I had people around me that would let me know what was happening. So here I was in Mexico, in isolation. I wasn't able to have real conversations with people. My team, I called them my team, had turned off almost all of my appointments. So I literally gone through a divorce, moved to another country, shut off my income, and an inability to communicate with the locals. Very, very interesting. And this continued. By July, I found myself in Tulum, Mexico. Things shifted massively in Tulum. I get the message, again, Ken, you need to go do Cambo and Bufo. Now, I don't like plant medicines. I don't like psychedelics. Absolutely not my thing. But I do this. And for the audience, Cambo is a frog poison or a frog medicine. And they'll burn little holes in your arm and they apply this frog poison to you. And it opens up the cells of your body and rapidly detoxes you within minutes, causes you to purge all this out. So my cells in my body are opened. I do the Bufo about 2 hours later. Bufo is what's known as, if you read about it, again, I'm not versed in this stuff, but it's called the God molecule. It's DMT. They say that this is the chemical, the DMT, that's released at birth and released at death. That experience is also labeled the ego death. I do the process, and for 10 minutes, completely loss of time. I have no idea what happened. But as I begin coming aware, the entire tent, I was in this tent in Tulum, and it was a kaleidoscope. So as you remember when you're younger, to age myself, the kaleidoscope is the idea of looking through this and everything is fractals of light, incredibly bright. In fact, it's so bright you want to wear sunglasses with your eyes closed. So as I'm coming through, I see my ego literally being walked out. He had a soul on his right, had a soul on his left, walking him over through a light, and he was not happy. He's looking back at me very, very upset this was happening to him. Now, as I continue to come through, in the tent, I see 22 shards of light. I had 22 soul walk-in aspects in my field. The one to the right looked solid form, like 3D, like you could reach out and hug the man. I open my eyes, same thing. And I get 2 messages at that time. I get the message, Ken, your 24th chromosome's online, and everything you have done was the sniff of the aroma of what was about to come. What had happened that day was as the cells of my body were opened, and as the ego was walked out, the 22 merged with my soul essence. We became a soul infusion. You can think of the soul infusion as the same idea of a collective. When we meditate, we will connect to a collective. But this collective was in my field, here. And they're here now, and they're always to my right, and they've got a single voice. And they help guide me to do the work I'm doing. I typically don't do in-person sessions with people in front of me, right? Everything I do is over Zoom, with distant healing and such. But I got to tell you, I had a situation literally just Friday, 5 or 6 days ago, where my team says, hey, you need to go to the children's hospital. I will tell you, I consider that the lion's den, right? Like I don't want to mess with any doctor stuff. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about it. And I make sure everyone realizes I have no idea what's happening to them. I don't need to know your condition. I don't need to know anything. I just show up, take your finger, point to the problem. That's all I need. And I'll get in there and work. So I get this message to go to the children's hospital. It was a message to a friend, but my team's like, you need to go in person. And I did, showed up the same day. And this amazing 12-year-old boy, the doctor said, basically, we're getting ready to send him home so he could finish life. They had an undiagnosed condition with him. And I spent 20 minutes with him. And then I spent about an hour with the mom, helping her with some of her trauma. But I left that day. I had no idea what I had done. The team. And I'm not supposed to know. I'm just supposed to show up, deliver, and be done. And I get a message the next morning that the boy had gone from 12 liters of oxygen down to 2, and they were getting ready to discharge him because he was making a recovery. Now, interesting enough, whatever was happening to the boy had caught the attention of the medical community. And now they are investigating how they can do, I'll just say, I don't want to say a better job because I think they do a great job, but how they can understand what was happening to him better and then create whatever solution. It was an amazing day to be able to show up, do that auto magic thing, and then to get that message. But this happens all the time. Someone doesn't have to be in front of me. And in fact, you don't have to be in front of me individually. I do groups of hundreds all the time where I'll sit there and the team will channel light language or the language of light, right? As I can see the energy moving through the body, and the team will say, we're done now. I'm what is also termed a hollow bone now. Because I'm able to show up without an understanding, without a foundation of what's happening, because I don't know spiritual practices. As I make the joke, I couldn't tell you what a ceremony is. It allows me to show up organically and for them to do the job. So thousands of different light languages will flow through me. And the way this works is who's ever in front of me receives exactly what they need, and I never know. And there could be 100 people there, and everybody will get, we can call it a slice and a dice of whatever energy healing they're looking for. So nothing I do is canned either. You won't show up for me to, I like to tease as well, on 8/8 on Lionsgate, you're not going to come to me for an activation. They'll activate you. And not only will they heal the body, but they will connect you to your higher self, to your team. For those people who are already healers or psychics or, doing their magic for the world, they will give them more of that. So basically, the way I say it, all the check boxes for whatever one needs is available, but I don't get to choose.
Can you do it now?
I can. Would you like to have that?
Yeah.
So what I usually tell the audience, and I love to do this, is that if you're not driving, please don't do this if you're driving, right? But just close your eyes for a moment. And I just want you to visualize the night sky. And just relax and allow whatever to take place. And here we go. I am a Kalakaniskania Tadi Nishilatara Dashuru. Ay kala ko niya makari anda di kaniya tiris kadiya no to kadiya no mo ala to yan shariaro no ria maria ni res kala ria mo kore ora to kono di sini ni kala mo rio to kore ma poko ko kia kiti ka aku kiski ni di atu do ka mo ko do skidia ala ro skudori ni di sirata ala ro to rio skadi ni skadi to rio no skadi bri skadi ori and ko bri skadi di studio bakat kat skadi bri skadi ori to ni mo to di skadi ti you can come out of that now. So everyone will have a different experience, and some no experience, right? Because it's also a timing thing. So whether you are ready for it or not, it's fine. And the other thing is that one of the things I've come to realize is just because someone shows up and they want their shoulder worked on, they might be working on the heart instead. There'll be other things that need to happen as well, right? So even though we said my team is really loves this. They say insistence is resistance. Insisting that this be worked on right now in this way, and 10 seconds later it's done, is resistance to allowing it to actually happen. Which is why everything just gets delivered without saying, now I'm going to work on your fingernail. I'm being funny. I like to be a little bit of funny, right? Everything just arrives.
What about that language that you're speaking?
Yeah, so the language of light, or light language, I'm a speaker and at the Light Language Conference in Arvada, Colorado at the end of May as well. So when we as humans talk to each other, we have, I don't know how many languages, Spanish, English, whatever these cases are, right? The universe has the language of light. And this is a way for consciousness to communicate with consciousness, a soul to communicate with the soul. The light language is designed so that we can't understand it. It's designed so that our ego or our mind can't interpret it. And this is intentional. If I was to sit here and tell you, hey, look at that red car racing down the road, we would some of us might say, well, that's a red car, a red Ferrari, and other of us might say that, well, that's a red Pinto on fire. We will all interpret that information very, very differently. In the universe, you can imagine there are different languages for every aspect, every ET, every planetary conscious out there. The language of light is the way that they all communicate. When I'm in my sessions, I will use the language of light not only verbally, but when I'm talking to your heart, because I can talk to the heart, it's language of light. Maybe not verbally, in my mind. When I'm talking to your team, your angels, your guides, whoever these are, these conversations all happen with this language of light. I don't control it. In fact, when it's coming out of my mouth, I'm in the back of my head looking at my tongue, and I'm looking at going to the left. I can see the frequencies coming out of my tongue on the left. I can see them coming out on the right, and I'm making fun of my team. I'm like, what? You can't make it come out of the middle? I have a very humorous relationship with my team. I don't do this. They control all the mouth and the frequencies coming out.
So tell me, what happened with this illness that you had, a congenital?
Yeah,
I think it was the pituitary gland.
Yeah, the pituitary tumor. So again, I didn't have a miracle healing. In fact, I have to go see someone else to help me. It's just kind of the way this is. I had surgery done at the University of Miami about 6 months later. And when they removed it, it turned out it was a pituitary tumor, stress, cortisol, 100% cortisol wrapped in a cortisol cyst. This is, it helps bring someone to awareness that, we can have so much stress in our life, it impacts our body. And now I'm in the medical books of the University of Miami because they hadn't seen cortisol tumor, cortisol cyst wrapped in there. I did recover, right? But I still had my healing, and I still have ankle issues and things like that I need to work on myself. But yeah, it's interesting. When you show up to give, you really do give without the expectation of receiving yourself.
How can people contact you if they're interested?
Yeah, so the website's kenlloydofficial.com. And, I've got my YouTube channel, kenlloyd.official as well, so you can look at some of the other things I have done. But the one thing I love to do is to give. So if you sign up for the newsletter, you will receive, free healings and free things that I also give. And if you are interested in any type of my sessions, If you use the coupon code HEALING, all capitals, so HEALING, there's 25% off everything I do. But give yourself the opportunity to experience at least the freebie that comes with the newsletter.
Do you have a final message for the world?
Everything you need is inside of you. Every answer, every direction, every guidance is inside of you. And if we just take the time to learn how to tap into that inner self, and we begin to turn off, I'll do the bunny ears, the noise of the world, stop allowing the world to tell us how yucky it might be, and we go inside, the world will show up very, very different for you. It's all in here. That's the message.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.